welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're looking at something absolutely fundamental to ComfyUI.
Yeah.
It's the nodes.
The node.
If you've looked at a ComfyUI workflow, you've seen all these boxes and lines,
Oh, yeah.
connecting them all together.
Yeah, you got to know this stuff.
Yeah, this is the foundation of everything we're going to be doing with ComfyUI.
Yep. And it's not that complicated, so.
No.
But you gotta have a good basic understanding.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Understanding these nodes and how they all connect together
It's like
to actually make
a factory.
images.
Yeah. Each node is like a station
Okay.
in the factory, and data flows through it.
So
And each one has a specific job to do.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because we even have those lines and they have different colors.
Yeah, and the colors have meaning.
Right. It's not just colors.
It's not just for show, it actually tells you what kind of data is flowing through that.
Exact. Connection point.
Yeah, each connection point
Okay.
has a meaning, and it's both by its color and by its name.
Exactly.
Okay.
So super important to pay attention to that.
So each node does one thing.
Yeah.
One specific thing in the workflow.
Okay, that's the key concept.
Okay.
You each do one thing and one thing.
All right. So let's say you're in ComfyUI. You're ready to start creating.
Yeah.
How do you get these nodes onto your canvas?
So you can drag them from the node library.
Okay.
You'll see that on the left-hand side.
So it's like a big list of nodes.
Yeah, big list of nodes.
Okay.
You can search for them if you know what you're looking for, or you can browse through all the different categories and see what strikes your fancy.
Nice.
But a faster way is just to double-click anywhere on the canvas,
Okay.
and it'll pop up a little search bar,
Okay.
and then you can just type the name of the node, and it will
cool.
filter it down as you type, and then you just click on it, and it appears.
And then the third way is the way that most people are used to,
Okay.
which is to right-click.
Yeah.
And you go to Add Node, and then you can select from all the different categories there.
Okay, so 3 ways to add
3 ways, yeah.
a node.
Okay, cool.
So once you have the node on the canvas, there's a few things that you might want to do.
Okay.
You can copy a node,
Okay.
and you can do that by pressing the Alt key or the Option key if you're on a Mac, and just dragging the node.
So like
Right.
click and drag, and then you let go, and it's
And you have 2 of them.
got it.
Or you can just copy and paste like you would with anything else. Curl plus C, Purl plus V, or CMD plus CMD plus V.
Nice.
Another thing you might want to do is resize the node.
Okay.
Some nodes can get very big,
Right.
so you'll see in the bottom right corner there's a little handle.
Okay.
You can just grab that and resize it and make it smaller or bigger.
Okay. It's just the bottom right.
Yeah, that's the only corner you can resize.
And then the last little tip is you'll see a small circle next to the node's name.
Yeah.
If you click on that, it collapses the node.
Okay.
If you have nodes that you don't really need to see all the settings for,
Yeah.
you can collapse it down, and it just shows the name of the node.
Nice, just to clean things up.
Yeah, clean things up.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we've got the basics of adding nodes, moving them around.
Yeah.
Let's look at the nodes themselves.
Yes.
Let's start with one of the fundamental ones,
Okay.
the load checkpoint node.
Yeah, this is the most important one.
So what does it do?
It loads the AI model that you're going to be using.
Okay, so what is a checkpoint?
A checkpoint is basically a file that contains all the data that the AI needs to generate images.
Okay,
Like it's like the knowledge base
got it.
for the AI.
Yeah,
So you have to load the right checkpoint.
so you're choosing like the artist almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like if you want to create a watercolor painting,
Yeah,
you're not going to use an oil painter. So you have to choose the right checkpoint for the type of images you want to create.
so there's a new one of these, I think?
Yeah, so there's a simple checkpoint loader.
Okay,
Now it replaces the old one, which was load checkpoint, with config.
okay.
The simple one is much easier to use.
What's so good about the simple one?
Well, it automatically gets the correct configuration
Okay,
for the model, so you don't need to worry about
yeah.
finding separate model and config files.
So what does this node actually take in?
The only thing it really takes in is the name of the checkpoint,
Okay,
but you can right-click on it and convert that into an input widget,
okay.
and then you can use other nodes to dynamically select different checkpoints.
Oh, cool. So you could feed in different
Yeah,
checkpoints.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, and where would you find these checkpoint files on your computer?
So typically they're in the config model checkpoints directory.
Okay,
The file extension is usually .safetensors
okay.
or .ckpt, which is the older format. These files are kind of like a container.
Okay.
they contain the unnet, which is the model itself,
Okay,
the clip, which is for understanding language,
got it.
and the they, which handles the conversion between the latent space
Okay.
and actual viewable images.
We'll be talking about the they later on, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Okay, so what are the outputs then?
So the load checkpoint node has three main outputs.
Okay,
The first is model,
okay,
which is usually purple.
okay.
That goes to the key sampler node.
We will be talking about that node.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the clip output, which is yellow,
Mm,
that usually goes to the CLIP text encode node.
right.
And then finally the VE output,
Okay.
which is pink or lavender.
Mm-hmm.
And that typically goes to the VAE decode node.
Okay, cool. So that is the load checkpoint node.
Yep, that's the starting point.
That's the most important node,
Yeah, it is.
you could say.
It is.
All right, let's move on to the next essential node.
Okay.
The CLIP text encode node.
This is where you put in your prompts.
Okay.
So both your positive and negative prompts.
Yeah, so I can tell it what I want in the image,
Yeah.
but also what I don't want in the image.
Exactly. So it's basically taking your text
Yeah,
and converting it to something that the AI model can understand.
it's translating.
Yeah, it's like a translator
Okay.
between human language and AI.
CLIP.
CLIP.
Yeah.
That stands for Contrastive Language Image Pre-Training.
And so how does it do that?
It takes your words, converts them into a series of tokens,
Uh-huh.
and then those are converted into numbers, which we call conditioning.
Okay.
And that conditioning is what's used to guide the image generation process.
Okay, so what goes into this node?
Well, you have the clip output
Yeah, from the checkpoint.
from the checkpoint node,
Okay.
and then the main input is just a text box where you type in your prompt,
Right.
whether it's positive or negative.
And what does it output?
It outputs conditioning, which
Okay.
has that orange color, and that goes into the case sampler node.
All right, so you mentioned positive and negative prompts. So are these two separate nodes?
Yeah, typically you have two CLIP text and code nodes.
Okay.
One for positive, one for negative.
Okay.
And it's helpful to color code them.
Okay, how would you color code them?
Usually green for positive
Okay.
and red for negative.
Just to keep it clear.
Yeah, just so you don't get them mixed up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've loaded our checkpoint, we've given it our text prompts.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next node, which is the empty latent image node.
So this is where you create your blank canvas,
Okay.
but it's not a canvas that you can see.
Okay.
It's in something called latent space.
Latent space.
Yeah.
Okay, this sounds a little bit
Abstract.
abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
What is latent space?
So it's a way of representing image data in a lower dimensional form.
Okay.
It's not actual pixels.
Got it.
It's more like a mathematical representation of the image. So we're not working with pixels directly yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay,
The conversion between latent space and pixels is handled by the VAE.
we'll get to that.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, the empty latent image node
Mm-hmm.
basically creates this blank slate
Okay.
in latent space.
And you can choose the size of this blank slate.
You can use the width and the height in
Right.
pixels,
Okay.
and you can also choose the batch size.
So batch size would be like the number of images you're creating at once.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it's like how many canvases
Got it.
you want to start with.
Okay, so what are the inputs to this empty latent image node?
So you've got width, height,
I see, straightforward.
pretty straightforward,
Yeah,
and then batch size.
okay,
And the output is latent,
right.
which goes into the K sampler node.
Okay, cool. And is there anything special about this latent image node when you're working with SDXL?
Yeah, with SDXL, it's generally recommended to use larger dimensions,
Okay.
like 1024 by 1024 pixels.
Because SDXL is
Like it's a
yeah,
higher resolution.
higher resolution, yeah.
Got it.
And it was trained on a lot of high-res data.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
All right, so we've got our checkpoint loaded. We've given it our text prompts.
Yeah,
We have our blank canvas and latent space.
yeah.
Let's move on to what I think is the main node here,
Okay.
the K sampler node.
This is where the magic happens.
This one's got a lot of inputs and settings.
It does.
So what is happening at this node?
So the K-sampler node is taking that random noise
Okay.
from the latent image,
Ah.
and it's progressively transforming it into a coherent image
Okay.
based on your prompts and all the settings you've chosen.
So this is where the actual image is created.
Yeah, it's
Like
called-
all those steps
Mhm.
are happening inside this node.
That's right.
Okay, so let's look at these inputs.
Okay.
First off, we've got the model
Yes.
from the load checkpoint node.
Yeah.
We've got positive and negative conditioning
Uh-huh.
from the CLIP text and code nodes.
Yes, okay.
And we have the latent image.
From the empty latent image node.
Exactly.
Okay. And then we've got
A whole bunch
of other
a bunch of other
settings.
settings. Yeah, what are those?
So we've got the seed,
Okay.
which is just starting number for the random number generator.
So if I want to create the same image again,
Yeah,
I can use the same seed.
same seed.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got the steps, which is the number of iterations
Okay.
that the sampler will perform.
So more steps generally means better quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
generally, but it also takes longer.
Got it. So
Yeah.
it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Right.
Then we've got the CFG scale.
Okay, what's
That
that?
stands for classifier-free guidance.
Okay.
And it basically controls how closely the model should follow your prompt.
Okay.
So higher CFG means it follows the prompt more closely.
Okay.
Lower CFG gives it more freedom
Okay.
to deviate.
Got it.
And then you've got the sampler,
Okay.
which is the actual algorithm that's used for the denoising process.
And there are lots of different samplers. There's a whole bunch of them. Yeah.
Okay, what are some examples?
So you've got things like Eulara,
Okay,
which can create very interesting and diverse images,
okay,
but it can also be a bit unpredictable.
got it.
And then you've got things like DPM plus 2M Keras,
Okay,
which is more stable and predictable.
okay. So you would choose your sampler depending on
Yeah.
what you're going for.
Exactly.
All right, and then we have the scheduler.
The scheduler basically controls how much noise is added or removed at each step.
Okay,
So it can affect the overall look and feel of the image,
got it.
and the speed of convergence.
Okay.
Some common examples are Keras and exponential.
All right, so that's sampler and scheduler.
Yeah.
And then there's one last input that I've seen sometimes,
Okay.
which is denoise.
So that one's typically used in image-to-image workflows.
Okay.
And it controls how much of the original image's noise is kept.
So you might keep some of the noise from the original image.
Yeah, if you want to.
Oh.
If you want to preserve some of that structure
Got it.
from the original image.
All right, so after all that processing,
Yeah.
what comes out of the K-sampler node?
So it outputs a latent image.
Okay, still latent space.
Still latent space, yeah.
Okay.
And that goes to the VAE decode node.
All right, so let's look at the VAE decode node.
Okay.
What does this node do?
It takes that latent image
Yeah,
and converts it back into pixels.
so this is where we finally see an image.
This is where you see the image, yeah.
Okay, cool. So what goes into this node?
So you've got the samples,
Which is the latent image.
which is the latent image from the K-sampler.
All right.
And then you need the VAE,
Okay, from the...
which can come from the checkpoint node,
Okay,
or you might need to load a separate VAE file.
right.
And that's done with a VAE loader node.
Got it.
So once you've got those two inputs,
Yeah.
it'll output an actual image.
Okay, and that's the green output?
That's the green output, yeah.
Okay. And I can go on to a...
Save image node or a preview.
Save image node, yeah.
Image node.
Let's talk about the save image node.
That's a pretty straightforward one.
Okay,
All it does is save the image to your computer.
okay, so what do I need to tell it?
It takes the image's input,
The green output.
the green output from the VA decode,
Okay,
and then there's one setting that you might want to change,
okay.
which is the file name prefix.
What does that do?
So it allows you to add a specific string to the beginning of the file name.
Oh, okay, so I could, you
Yeah.
know, put all the images from a certain set in a certain
Yeah.
folder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So that's pretty much it for the save image node.
All right, so we've now gone through the entire chain of nodes
We have, yeah,
for a basic text-to-image workflow in ComfyUI.
the essential nodes.
So we load the model,
Yeah,
we feed it text prompts, we create a latent image.
Yep.
The K-sampler does its magic.
a workhorse.
We decode the latent image into an actual image,
Yes,
and we save it.
that's it.
That's the workflow. Now, what happens if our workflows start to get more complicated?
Yeah.
You know?
You need to keep them organized.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to become a spaghetti mess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a few things you can do.
Okay.
You can color code the nodes.
Right, we've talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can collapse nodes.
Okay.
That helps to clean things up.
Yeah.
You can just arrange the nodes in a logical way.
Okay.
So maybe from left to right, following the flow of data.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Are there any specific nodes to help with organization?
Yeah, there's the reroute node.
Okay, what does that do?
So to basically let you redirect the flow of data.
Okay.
So if you have a long connection that's kind of going all over the place.
Yeah.
You can use a reroute node to kind of break it up
Okay.
and make it neater.
So there's just like a connector.
Yeah, like a connector, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then you can also group nodes together.
Okay.
So if you have a bunch of nodes
Yeah.
that are all doing a specific thing,
Uh-huh.
you can group them together, and then you can move them around as a single unit.
Nice. That's super useful.
Yeah, it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered color coding collapsing,
Yeah.
rerouting and grouping.
Yeah.
So that's how we keep things organized as
Yeah.
things get more complicated.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've looked at all the essential nodes.
Yep.
For a basic text-to-image workflow in ComfyUI,
Yep.
understanding these nodes is really the foundation
It is.
of using ComfyUI.
It is.
There are a lot of more advanced nodes
Oh, yeah. Tons.
that we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
But these are
Yeah, but these are the basics.
these are the basics.
You gotta know this stuff.
So what's the best way for our listeners to actually...
Practice.
Yeah.
Get in there and start building some workflows.
Yeah. Make some images.
Yeah, play around with the settings, see what happens.
Exactly.
The more you experiment, the better you'll understand it.
Cool. So you can start with a basic workflow and then just kind of add to it.
Yeah.
Experiment with different nodes.
Exactly.
See what they do.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information.
It was.
But hopefully, that will help people get started with ComfyUI.
Definitely.
So as you're experimenting with ComfyUI, I want you to think about something.
Okay.
Each node is like a transformation.
Okay.
It's taking the data and it's transforming it in some way.
Yeah.
So by combining these nodes in different ways,
You can create,
all sorts of crazy stuff.
yeah, crazy and interesting things.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind
Yeah.
as you're building your workflows.
It's like building with Lego bricks.
Yeah.
You can build anything.
All right, well, thanks for diving deep with us.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.